documents. Look, do you remember in the hadith, there's several hadith on numbers of prophets, messengers, and mundir, like warners. Sometimes the Quran will use warners. That don't mean that they was a prophet. They were a warner, which is a high status. And so it mentions 120,000, something like that, and then 300,000. I've seen one, but it's definitely 120,000. Okay. Now, when you see that goes back, the earliest they go back is 2,500 years or a little more than that in their stuff. Or the farthest they go back in talking about somebody, they talk about them like, I guess they might go back, because they talk about them like if it's 2,500 years ago, they're talking way back. So you can see they're talking, historians say 4,000 years, 4,500 years, around that. So China got when you hear about Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, they mention 4,000 years, hanging gardens of Babylon and all of that, Well, you can see the people he's talking about, that's the era. And, but like, remember the other program we have on Sundays? What was it? Guides for Better Living. Did you see that one? Oh my goodness. They call it. That one was very good. And the ones that got, what I've seen so far is all of their great people, when you mention their message, uh, it's like guides to better, ours is called Guides to Better Living. Theirs is talking about those people that came to teach them those. Every one of the guys would fit into, because none of them are talking against a supreme being, but they use the terminology, even in the commentary that we've studied before, celestial kingdom, or the heavens will do such and thing, whatever it is. It's not, they said this is a big guy here, but he's piping into the historical flows from heaven and all that. Every message that I saw him handing out would fit right into hadith. And I can see why our hadith say search for knowledge even as far as China. And I'm going to get into cycles for a minute. So I'll go back here and get started. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. A lot of what we're going to talk about today is historical exposure to human behavior or human behaviorism. And we've always talked a lot about longevity, stickability, and what have you. And we've always hinted that most of our greatest people who we admire, well, if you talk about the two closest to all of us, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, They both were killed when they was 39 years old. Even in Jahiliyyah, they talk about, well, in religion, they talk about the age of prophethood is 40 years. And in the Jahiliyyah, you can't pimp till you're 40. Of course, that's the biggest rule. That's the number one rule. Well, before that, your body's in control of, it's not a hard, fast rule. But until you get certain, because I know some of the biggest boys, they was still kind of young, but at that age, 40, at that time, 40 was an age of maturity and what have you, especially when people wasn't living that long nowadays. But just visualize all the people that they are honoring. They show them when they was a little kid. They show them when they was grown and moving. And they show them in old age. And one of them, it might have been the book of the one on book when they're showing. I just think what they're showing always archives. They're showing, yeah, and how they honor knowledge. And it reminds us the hadith, one knowledgeable man is harder on the shaitan than 1,000. Some hadith, somewhere they translate it, ignorant worshippers. It don't mean ignorant, just regular worshippers. They doing everything. Allahu Akbar. They doing everything right, and they not doing nothing wrong. They just worshiping. But one man with hikmah, and that's true. So also the way they have honor certain things and certain people and the family. The ones I listened, I piped into the last couple of days I could see how they got to where they got to and how they classified the last 100 years, or 150 years, what have you, the years of shame and what have you. Because that's the first time in all their thousands of years of existence they was running things. Even Kishar Mahbubani, he said that, look, it was China and India all the past. So up to 200 years ago, and that's when Britain had got over in China. They were in China too, but they was also in well, let's call it that part of the world. And so when they broke up China, and when they conquered India in a certain water, and the way they did India, they just slid in like we ain't gonna hurt nobody. We did the East Indian Company, They just slid in. They didn't come in and we're gonna knock you over. But they looked up and Boss Man was in there. This, what we're dealing with right now, and what we're dealing with right today, is a culmination of what we've been talking about all the time, because it's clear everybody can look and see that it's not us been talking about it. And why would we talk about longevity? Everybody you would see was old. Why? Because when you're young, you're just getting you're just getting the feel. You don't have time to go through different stages. That's why they killed Malcolm, and they killed. You could see both of them was in heavy transition. Malcolm in 65 go to Hajj and come back. He ain't calling white folks the devil no more. He's saying, I saw white folks like the ones from over there with the whitest of the white, the eyes the bluest of the blue. And they was submitting to Allah. So maybe if we could get Islam to them, then maybe it might have the same effect on them as it has on these other Evidently, white folks, they can't get no blonder hair than the white folks he saw at Hodge, did they? Or bluer eyes, they just couldn't, because they were European. Okay, anyway. And King, I'm not going to say if, because that opened the door to all kind of dumb stuff. But just look at it like both of them were converging with balance. They was bringing balance, because when King starts off on his journey, he's just too sweet and just too da, da, da. When Malcolm starts off on his journey, he's just too tight and tense, and you know what I mean. And you see both of them, because they were getting balance. Boss man says, no, we can't wait. We can't wait, because see, the pressure they was on would produce the balance in a hurry. It's like having a scale and you just dropping big stuff on it, clunk, and on this side, clunk, and produce. You know what I mean? It's not like us that we have a long time. We've always talked about evolution, and now we're beginning to talk about blending revolution and evolution to where, because now the time frame is closing in on us. This is according to our analysis of the time that we're in. You know, but okay, let me. I start this by saying, an era of living confirmation. An era of living confirmation. So, what is it confirming? When we have the book of documents, the instructions for practical living, and I don't know if anybody saw that one. That's the one we talk. Instructions, we call ours guides to better living. On Sunday, right? Technically, that's still what it is. Guides to better living. Thousands of years ago, they have instructions for practical living. Records of the grand historian. You know, I don't know if you saw that one. This is the great historian. So we got, just what I run across, we got 3 of our key words right there already. You know, we got book of documents, instructions for practical living, guides to better living, records of the grand historian. All of those, you know, we understood. If you want to turn the heat up, it won't hurt a little bit. We could feel the cycles that China as a society went through. You could also see the cycle that they went through in the last 40 years, but it was mainly the last 30 years. If anybody else would have went through from where they was then to where they are now, they would be crazy. They wouldn't be able to, but you could see how they were prepared for this. You know, they were set up for this. And for the Chinese system, I mean, really, after watching what they've been through, like, we're really pulling for them. If they can tighten up Africa, they're not exactly like they was 50 years ago, because it was a loan, and it was just 1% loan, and the Chinese worked harder on the railroad than, excuse me a second. Scam Lackley, is that you? Scam Lackley, is that you? These guys make my day. Because note, they don't answer it at all. But the phone says Scam Lackley, so is this Scam Lackley? Hey, man, how you been doing? Scam Lackley, man, that was a big thing happened a long time ago. Remember that big scam we did a long time ago? and they just paralyzed for a second because they're used to all kind of responses, but they not, hey, scam likely, man, good God Almighty, I've been sitting here by the phone waiting on hearing from you. So this is my little fun stuff I do, with them. It's not like calling the people and say, is your refrigerator running? Remember did y'all do that when you was kids? Is your refrigerator running? Yeah, it's running. Well, you better go out and catch it. That's pitiful. I'm telling you, it's the same old dumb stuff that passed on from generation to generation. Okay, an era of living confirmation. And I'm going to get into what that means. We're right now, when we hit this one out of the park, we're going to try to hit it out in a little